Hello everyone and welcome to Back to the Box Office, a show where we compare the biggest movies of 2019 to the biggest movies of 1999. My name is Danny. I'm joined today by Marcus.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
And special guest, James.
Hey, how's it going?
The keeper of all Toy Story lore here at the table. For the first time in a few weeks, I think we're going to talk about a pair of good movies for a change. We have Toy Story 4, which came out this past Friday. Was that June 21st, thank you, 2019. And we're looking at the 1999 movie that was number one that weekend, which was Big Daddy, the Adam Sandler classic.
So, yeah, I guess we'll jump into the numbers and we'll give a little bit of our thoughts. So, Toy Story 4 opened at $120 million domestic. It had a budget of $200 million. And it made $26,000 per theater on average. It opened at 4,500 theaters. As of right now, its total gross is 52% domestic, so 48% foreign, and it got a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. And as Danny mentioned, it came out June 21st, 2019. So Big Daddy, that opened June 25th, 1999. It opened at $41 million. It made an average of $13,000 per theater. As like I mentioned for Toy Story, that was $26,000. Its production budget was $34 million. Altogether worldwide, it made $234 million. Its Rotten Tomatoes score is 40%, and it opened at 3,200 theaters. So, like you mentioned, this is our first episode in basically a month where the 2019 release actually made more than the 1999 comparison.
It's been a rough few weeks. It's been a rough summer, I think, at the box office. Sequelitis, they're calling it, but I don't know if that's just the case. I mean, even Toy Story. I remember. Well, James and I, we talked about this like probably a couple weeks ago. Like there was projections that Toy Story 4 could open at almost $200 million. There was some chatter about that. And then even before the movie came out, I think on Thursday they had it listed as 160. Yeah. And then I know Disney's internal projections were like or not even internal. That's what they were putting out. There was like 140, and then made $20 million. Projections are weird though because go ahead, James. You can jump in with.
I was going to say their projections were off by about 20 million, but I think if we look at the span of the movies, barring of course the two Marvel movies this year, I think most studios would be pretty happy with probably 120.
Well, yeah, it's still the third biggest opening. Of the year.
I think I don't think it's fair to necessarily call it a disappointment. I guess if you're looking at it based on the projections, but the reason I think projections are a little strange is because I don't remember I think it was Dan Merle over on Screen Junkies. He does kind of a box office breakdown, and he was showing like these articles from about a month ago or over a month ago of the initial tracking numbers, and the initial tracking was like 105 to 130. So if you're looking at that range, it fell within that range, and then for some reason, like on the same day. A couple weeks later, there were multiple projections out. Yeah, some saying it's going to beat The Incredibles 2 at over $200 million, and just wild projections that I don't know if projections are good. I don't think they track necessarily what the movie's going to project to open at as much as it does like what the marketing is doing, and it's more tracking the marketing rather than the eventual performance of the film.
You raised a really good point. You brought up Incredibles 2. So, here are the numbers for Incredibles 2. So, that opened at $182 million, and altogether it made $1.2 billion, and it made over $600 million domestic. So, it too was about a 50-50 split, 49% domestic, 51% foreign. And, I was also kind of thinking that based on how well Incredibles 2 did, I was thinking, well, if Incredibles 2 can make this much, isn't Toy Story 4 going to make more than that? I remember we talked about this in the past. I was like, oh, well, I was thinking when Incredibles 2 came out, I didn't even really think there was that big of a market for it. I knew that people wanted it, but I didn't know that they wanted it $60 million more than Toy Story 4.
I think there was a huge pent-up demand for that movie. The first movie is incredibly popular, and it came out pre the comic book movie explosion, and those same fans that are huge into Marvel and the DCEU were kind of raised with The Incredibles as their comic book movie primer, so to speak, like the thing that they're basing it on. So people were demanding it, and then it came out, and it was actually really good, and so that probably helped.
I think there is an argument to be said, I think as Danny was alluding to too, that it is a fresher franchise. So having a second entry, particularly building off of, again, the success of, at the time, I believe it was Infinity War, and then everything that we had with superheroes going into it, I think it was part of that. But I think also, as I believe as Rotten Tomatoes and others had predicted, Box Office Mojo did too, that it was Father's Day weekend, might have had some kind of a impact on it. I'm not sure if that's fully the case. I don't think you can necessarily argue for a $60 million bump necessarily just because of Father's Day weekend. But I do think there was kind of a perception, particularly the way that Toy Story 3 ended, that this may have been a cash grab on their part. I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah.
I think it was still a well-rounded movie. I don't know how we'll judge probably how this compares to the other three later, but I think that may have been a perception out there, which wasn't the case with Incredibles 2. I think the audience perceived that there was still enough content there, and I think the marketing did a really strong job of introducing the characters again to the audience. In this case, maybe not so much, and that might have played a role.
I mean, you raised a really good point when you said the thing about like superheroes last year, because I'm thinking, so like last year, the three highest grossing films were all superhero related, right? You had Infinity War, Black Panther, Incredibles 2. So all superheroes. And then this year too, I'm thinking like if Spider-Man opens up really well, and let's say that Spider-Man by the time that it's done in theaters is the third highest grossing film of the year so far for 19. I mean, is that kind of getting to the point now where only superhero films are the only things that are a for sure $1 billion gross? Because as of right now, I mean, with Toy Story 4, I mean, it's made like $238 million, something like that worldwide as of, like on Wednesday. So, or Tuesday.
Right, today's Tuesday. But that 238 number, isn't that the highest opening weekend of any animated, considering all box office, international and domestic?
Yeah, I don't know about Incredibles, because Incredibles, if it opened at 180 domestic, I don't know if it opened at
I don't know how many markets. I mean, it depends on what markets it opened in and the timing of that, but I think it was. I think I read that it's not a disappointment, and it did. Toy Story 4 opened higher than Toy Story 3. Granted, Toy Story 3 was 9 years ago, but that movie still opened, lower and went on to gross $1 billion.
Well, do you guys think Toy Story 4 will make $1 billion?
I think it has a really good chance. These kind of movies have really long legs. In the next couple of weeks, there's nothing until Spider-Man comes out. There's not really any. What's the marquee opening this Friday?
So this Friday is Annabelle.
Okay, yeah, no. See, totally different audience. You got like the Ari Aster movie Midsummer is coming out. Like yesterday, the Beatles movie. They're playing for a totally different demographic. I think Toy Story has this weekend again to kind of ride that in, bring in those family audience members, and I think it's going to do well into the end of the summer. To Frank, I mean, look at what Aladdin's doing. It's the fifth. It's been out, and it's still in the top 3. I mean, that doesn't happen unless there are other movies that people are interested in, and particularly people for that demographic. And there just hasn't been this summer.
I mean, the only thing that I would say is I don't know for sure if Toy Story 4 will make $1 billion, because I think it all comes down to so it's already opened up in a lot of the big international markets, right? Yeah. And if we go by this, because if it is similar to Incredibles 2 where it plays a 50-50 split domestic international gross, I don't know if Toy Story 4 will have that much greater than a 3 times multiplier, right? So I mean, let's say even at best it does incredibly well and has a 4-time multiplier, right? So it makes $480 million domestic. I mean, I don't know if they could do that. And if even for China, I mean, I don't think Toy Story 4, because a lot of movies when they go to China, don't they only stay in the box office if they're foreign for 3 or 4 weeks, right? And this past weekend, for some random reason, Spirited Away, so Studio Ghibli, which did Spirited Away, all of their films are distributed internationally, or at least outside of Japan, by Disney. But for some random reason, Spirited Away got released in China for the first time, and it made about $10 million more than Toy Story 4 did there. So Toy Story 4, if that only plays for 3 or 4 more weeks in China, and its opening weekend was only 15 to 17 million in China, I don't know. I mean, that's the second biggest market, and if you're not able to get a lot of money out of that, I don't know if I feel $1 billion for Toy Story 4 is going to be a steep climb. I mean, it's not impossible, like you said, Danny, because there's not a lot of really child-friendly content out there. Especially even Spider-Man. I mean, that still is PG-13, and this Toy Story, I mean, it's not a childish film where adults can't like it, but I mean, it's a G-rated animation film about toys, so it's geared towards children.
Is it G? Because those the ventriloquists are a little terrifying. I would think that would require parental guidance.
I can double. I thought it was G. Let me double check.
And also, I don't know.
It is G. Yeah.
Is it G?
Yeah.
Wow, the standards have really.
You can get away with anything now. I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, that's terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like one thing too you could probably chalk up to Toy Story 4 is maybe not super duper great opening weekend. Is maybe just to slump altogether in the box office. I mean, that could really play an element this year.
Yeah, I wonder what you guys think. I was thinking about this. Like, do you think that Disney opening Avengers Endgame when it did just sort of sucked the air out of the entire summer season? Like, I feel like that if they had positioned that at the end of the summer and then given it all the room in the back end, like into September, October to run, not only would it might have beaten Star Wars domestically, but I think just people are anticipating something over the summer, and now that we kind of got the big bang up at the front, that's not how you do things.
I mean, you raise a good point that, and like in the fact that Disney, they're quote re-releasing Endgame this weekend.
Yeah, well, they're
just putting extra stuff in, and they're putting back in more theaters. So like when you think about it, like, you know, Captain Marvel came out in March. By the time that was, you know, kind of trending downwards, you already had Endgame, the big marketing push for that. And now, like, there's a little bit of a blip back for Endgame, and then it's going to be Spider-Man. So it's so much, like you said, like Endgame, this huge thing, but also just the MCU in general just being so, like, gargantuous that, like, in a sense, I wonder if Disney, you know, I know they're not releasing Spider-Man by themselves, but, like, Spider-Man comes out, 2 weeks before Lion King? Mm-hmm. Are you telling me that those two films are going to take money away from one another? Of course that they will. I mean, those are totally very similar audience for both films.
I think there's definitely an argument that the way their release schedule, particularly this year, was framed up, that they are actually cannibalizing their own movies a little bit. Now, they would argue probably different audiences are going for traditional audiences versus a superhero-leaning audience, which would be more your young adults, male audiences. Even, I think, if you look at the breakdown, if I remember, of Captain Marvel, I think that was a majority male audience, if I recall. I still think what's going to be at least 52, 53% male, I believe. Still, I think if you're looking at the way it's framed up, I mean, it clearly has sucked the oxygen out of any non-Disney Studios, I think, room. But I think if you're looking at this realistically, I think Toy Story, you still have to be pleased at least with the numbers where they are. Probably not overly excited jumping up and down, but pleased where they are. And I think if you look at, you apply the 4-time multiplier rule to Aladdin, it definitely exceeded that. I think you could look at it this way too and maybe see where things go.
Because I think Aladdin, because that made 80 million opening, but that was a 4-day.
It's already at like 800 plus worldwide.
Is it now? Okay, that's crazy. So domestic though, I think it's like a little under 300, right? So it had,
it's like around 240, I think.
Okay, yeah, that Aladdin did.
That did really well.
I mean, I think we mentioned this, Danny, the last episode that we did. Like, if you were to take away Disney from the box office this year, like let's say Disney said we're not going to make any movies this year, we're not going to put any movies out. I mean, I think we would be hearing about how movie theaters are closing right now. Like, honestly, if it wasn't for Captain Marvel, Endgame, Aladdin to a certain extent, and now Toy Story to a certain extent, like the highest grossing film outside of those 4 Disney films for the year, well, Toy Story isn't yet one of the highest grossings, but it will become. I mean, the highest grossing film after Aladdin is a Chinese film that made $2 million domestic, The Wandering Earth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's your highest grossing non-Disney film of the year.
They do carry the lion's share. In fairness to the other studios, I mean, Disney just kind of bought all, you know, they swallowed up all the properties that if these were with other studios, then they would be the ones making that money and not Disney. So it's not like some secret formula. They just literally had more capital to go and buy the things.
And some of these studios too had really unfortunate luck. Like Secret Life of Pets 2, for example. Like, I mean, I only saw the second one. I didn't see the first one, and I kind of thought the second one was a little boring. But like, this first one made $800 million plus, and this like worldwide. The second one's made like I don't even think 200 million yet. So like, it's a huge.
Although they did hedge their bet because they kept the costs down on the budget, so it's still going to turn a profit for them. It's not what they hoped, but I mean, maybe it is sequelitis. I mean, I'm certainly tired of them. I've never really been one to clamor for sequels and follow-ups.
And I think the other studios are probably hedging too. I mean, they knew the release schedule in advance. If you're sitting at a poker table, to use an analogy, and the other person has a stack of chips much higher than yours, you're going to end up folding a lot more. I think the other studios saw the hand that Disney had going into this year and figured they were going to hold some of their other blockbusters potentially for future years too. Disney's not always going to have a release schedule like this.
No, they're not. I mean, that's why maybe you can see why, like, you know, Fast and Furious 9 is going to open next year. And I mean, I'm sure there's other, you can go down the list, I'm sure there's other properties, but yeah, I was going to mention for Big Daddy, like, a film, like, I mean, I think we mentioned this, Danny, the first episode we ever did, the Forces of Nature movie.
Yeah.
That, like, so Big Daddy, right? So basically recouped their whole costs, you know, maybe not all marketing costs, but the first weekend it broke even. For a movie like that to have like that mid-budget and it made $238 million worldwide, I mean, this is the epitome of a movie that does not get made today. The equivalent of this being made today is that Murder Mystery with Adam Sandler. They got released straight on Netflix.
Yeah, you know, we've talked about like how specifically with Forces of Nature, and we've kind of gone into the whole rom-com genre not existing today in that way. In the theaters anyways, it kind of lives on Netflix now, and I think what we've seen in the last couple of years too is the kind of broad studio comedy, which is what Big Daddy is with the typical, you know, the comedy star. That's also kind of gone away. I mean, we had Game Night last year. That did pretty well, and that's kind of that broad comedy, but this summer this year I can't think of any comedies that have really broken out in that same way.
Because what was that, Charlize Theron, Seth Rogen?
Yeah, Long
I know you
Shot.
mentioned that
that was I mean, that's a romantic comedy, but I also could, frankly I didn't see the movie, so
and it barely made any money.
Yeah, but I kind of feel bad. I really wanted to see it. I just couldn't find the time, but I don't think it's a weird time for comedy. I mean, comedy also now is kind of moving to that Netflix model, which, you know, Adam Sandler was one of the earliest adopters that we saw of that. He signed that deal with Netflix a few years ago for some astronomical amount to release whatever, I think it was 6 movies, or I don't know what the initial deal was, but, you know, they've come out. We've had the Do-Over and like the Ridiculous Six and Sandy Wexler, like all these movies. That was
the one with Ben Stiller? No. Was the one with Ben Stiller was a drama?
Oh, no, that was the Merowitz Stories. Oh, okay. Yeah, that was actually a really good movie. That's actually, of the movies Adam Sandler has made, that's the only one on Netflix. That's the only one I've seen outside of Murder Mystery, which I've fully seen Murder Mystery. I was telling you, I've seen the first 20 minutes and the last 20 minutes, and I feel like I've gotten everything I need to get out of that movie.
Well, James and I, we watched that this past weekend.
It was enjoyable. Like I didn't dislike it.
I mean, the price was right for it.
Perfect. Free. Yeah, exactly.
But you know, you sent me an article. I forgot who published it, but
I think it was Fortune magazine.
Was it Fortune that they said that if Murder Mystery had come out in the theaters, it would have made $120 million.
Well, based on how many people Netflix watched? Said like 30 million views based on like a $9 per ticket average nationally. Yeah, they projected 120 million, which is, you know, ridiculous. That would.
Well, their biggest thing is that, you know, it's there's the idea that it's like, okay, people are watching it, but I mean, are they kind of also watching it because it's free? Like what do you think that Murder Mystery movie would have opened to if it was actually
probably like 10 to 15? Yeah, it would have been like number 3, number 4 opening.
Yeah, it probably would have done right around what Child's Play did, maybe a little less than that. Because I think Child's Play was like 14 or 17 million, something like 14. That.
Yeah, it wouldn't have done anything at the box office. I don't think.
No, so I mean that's what really makes like a Big Daddy film really interesting, and you know, again, you know, especially. I don't know when it totally died off, probably like I guess early this decade, maybe late last decade, this idea of like these mid-budget types of films that like, you know, didn't need to make $300 million to justify being made. Yeah,
Big Daddy almost did.
Yeah, Big Daddy did incredibly well. So that got that director, the guy that did Big Daddy, he did several other films because of it. Like, let me pull up his filmography, because he really wrote that for a while.
I guess first we'll find out his name. I don't remember.
So it's Dennis Dugan. So he did Grown Ups 2, Jack and Jill, Grown Ups 1, You Don't Mess with the Zohan.
Oh, wow. He's on a good streak there with Adam Sandler.
Yeah, he did. But he also did Happy Gilmore and Beverly Hills Ninja, I like those. And he did Problem Child. But since Big Daddy, though,
so we can fairly say that his career has had a steady decline.
Yeah, definitely since Big Daddy,
at least in quality of
yeah, I mean, his next film after Big Daddy was Saving Silverman, which I actually also like the film. That might be because I was a kid when it came out. That movie, Saving Silverman only made like $19 million worldwide. It was a total bomb. I mean, even though Saving Silverman wasn't like a huge budget film, I mean, to make $19 million.
Now, Sarah Silverman's not in that, right? That's all I can think about when you say that. Yeah.
Isn't that what? That's no. It's it has Jason Bateman and Jack Black. They're like Jason Bateman is marrying this girl. It's really bad.
Who's not Sarah Silverman. I just want to make sure that she's not in it. Because
I know she's not in it. I remember.
I actually really like this movie though. Yeah, there's like the three, but
we'll talk about that in a special episode.
Saving Silverman.
Yeah, the box office losers of 1999. Or that was in 1999, was it?
That was like 2000. I don't have them in front of me, but
we'll get there.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think for Big Daddy, I mean, I feel like too. I mean, I guess we'll probably say this a little bit more when we get into our.
What was the competition that year? Where's my?
Well, the weekend before that was Tarzan. So, like, it still competed with Tarzan. I mean, Austin Powers. That's the other thing, too. Austin Powers only come out 2 weeks before that as well. So you kind of had, these... I mean, I guess they're different kinds of comedies, Austin Powers. But even that, too, I mean, that even raises a really good point, too, that, like, in 99, I feel like you kind of already see the trend a little bit of, like, you already had the big tentpole types of films have already existed for a while, but... In 99, you still kind of had that element of, like, you can have a film like Star Wars make all this money, and then, you get a thing like Tarzan, which, I mean, there's been, 300 renditions of Tarzan. It's not, like, an original idea necessarily, but then, you get a film like Big Daddy, which is basically, just a kind of semi-heart-filled comedy, and that's what it is. And Austin Powers, which is a sequel to a parody type thing. But they can both make a lot of money, though.
I think that's the sign of a healthy movie ecosystem, where there's just a lot of diversity in the types of films that are gaining viewers.
Exactly. I mean, 1999, I mean, the same year that produced, The Matrix was, 99. Yeah. The Sixth Sense was the highest grossing film of the year. But then, you also make some of these big tentpole type films. But I guess we could probably, get into our thoughts a little bit about the movies. What did you guys, I guess we could start with Toy Story 4. James, what did you think of Toy Story 4?
I thought it was good overall, but as I think a lot of other folks have said, and I know I've read it on commentary too, I think it probably wasn't as strong as the first three. I think the argument there is that this acts more as an epilogue to the broader story without giving spoilers in too much great detail. I mean, it really is Woody and Bo Peep's story. It's apparent just by the amount of screen time they have. In the movie overall, I like the end. I think the end is very strong. The third act, I think, is very strong. I think overall Buzz Lightyear's character could have been a little bit stronger. I also think there could have been more of the actual characters from the original movies, but I actually didn't mind a lot of the newer characters. The ones that I probably struggled with actually liking the most were Key and Peele's character, at least in the introduction. I feel like they came up kind of obnoxious. Later on, there were some scenes with them that I think were kind of funny and humorous, but I think there was kind of a struggle and ebb and flows to kind of like the actual characters, at least in my mind. They didn't feel like they fit that universe. I feel like they would have fit into... potentially a Illumination film.
Yeah.
But not so much into a Pixar film.
It's a little insulting.
It is a little bit.
I had a different take. I really enjoyed all the new characters, and in particular, Duck and Bunny, the Key and Peele characters, I think those are the names, right?
Yeah, Duck and Bunny, I think.
They had my favorite scene in the movie, which was when they're discussing the plan of how to get, when they're in the antique shop, and how do we get the key from the antique shop owner? And I just love those cutaways to, like, with the jazz soundtrack, and it's really slow, and then especially the third time you do it, because it's a rule of threes in comedy, and you're like, where is this going? Because it's taking forever, and she's taking a bath, and then they just that got the biggest laugh from me of the movie. So I actually really liked all of them. Forky's a great character. It was a fun. It lacked the emotional impact, I think, that like Toy Story 3 had for me personally, and that some other Pixar movies, Coco,
Up.
Well, I was Inside Out. Those all had a real emotional impact on me when I watched them. in this movie, you know, there was some emotion, especially at the end when they're saying goodbye, and there's certainly depth to it, you know, if you want to examine it from that sort of existential perspective or lens. But yeah, overall, I mean, I don't. It's not in my top 3 Toy Story films, but I enjoyed it. I mean, I did. The biggest issue I had with it was actually the dumbification of Buzz Lightyear. Yeah, and that to me read like, I don't know if you guys noticed this in sitcoms like in Friends or Big Bang Theory, but after a certain number of years, you know, there's a certain characters that they just kind of turn to become really stupid. Like Joey was not the smartest in Friends, but he wasn't that dumb. And then seasons like 4, 5, 6, like him and Phoebe just got way off the rails. And the same thing happened kind of with Sheldon in The Big Bang Theory, and I'm sure there's other examples, but I feel like that's what they did to Buzz Lightyear. They kind of, the story's gone on so long, they weren't sure what to do with him, so they just kind of turned him into like a fool. And I didn't appreciate that.
I totally agree with you that I feel like when it came to them, because I mean, James, you mentioned that too, like this idea of like, if you're a fan of the old characters outside of Woody, you're probably not going to really be that happy. Like if you're a big fan of Slinky and the aliens, they barely talk or do anything. But like, I think for Buzz, somebody was like, oh, well, Buzz is like the second biggest character in this franchise. We got to have him do something. And literally for for most... And he doesn't even hook up to the plot. He's just stumbling around, and he's like, oh, I'm looking for Woody, even though I have no idea if Woody's in this town. I have no idea where exactly he is. And I'm just going to press that button to hear my inner voice thing and to find him. And it was just, yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, it also just kind of played off that, I mean, you're right. Like, I'm trying to think of other, like, shows that did, like, I know, like, Family Guy did something similar where it was, like, Peter went from just being kind of stupid to, like, fully fledged, mentally challenged. I mean, he says in the show, he gets diagnosed as like mentally challenged or something, and it's like, you know, Buzz Lightyear went from a character that was like really bizarre, and this it was just like, oh, yeah, he's just kind of passive, very passive, but somebody was like, hey, you know, this is Buzz Lightyear, he's on the posters of every movie, so make that a thing.
And I mean, you think about like his journey in other movies, right? Toy Story 2 in particular, I mean, he's split off from Woody, and he has to go save Woody. He leads all the other toys, essentially, and still manages to find his way by himself when the other Buzz Lightyear is with the other toys, and then convince all the other toys that he is the real Buzz Lightyear. So, I mean, it's like a real journey for him in Toy Story 2. I mean, you could argue in Toy Story 1, obviously, he's definitely dumbified in the sense that he is a brand new toy. And
he's not dumb. He's just having a crisis of identity.
Yeah.
Everyone's gone through that in life.
But in Toy Story 2, I mean, he brilliantly, I think, actually is the lead to really save Woody in a sense. And
well,
in this
he's
one,
important in the film, and
he's
happening.
Stumbling.
And in 3, I mean, he and Woody are co-stars of the franchise.
Yeah, I mean, but this film, it was like, if you're going to break down the stardom, it's Woody is 95% and Buzz is 5%.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, maybe the other ones, maybe Woody was 55, 45, maybe something like that. I mean, this is virtually like Buzz is just totally delegated to the back. I mean, I guess it's not as bad as, like I said, I mean, if you're a fan of like the aliens or something.
Yeah, but those are just always minor characters. Like Buzz, the central, the emotional core of the other movies, at least. Well, not the emotional core, but the main friendship relationship that we see on screen is Buzz and Woody, and the dynamics of that relationship are interesting. In this case, they're separated, and like I thought the inner voice thing was funny the first time, but the third time he did it, I'm like, this is kind of like, it was just a little, it didn't hit for me.
He does it more than even 3 times.
Yeah, he did it a few times.
Yeah, so I mean, the part where when they're running away from the cat and they end up, I guess, on the roof of the building, and like when everybody leaves him, or everybody leaves Woody, and like Buzz pushes it like 5 times.
Yeah,
it's kind of like, come on, like, I mean.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of ridiculous to sit here and talk about this little Space Ranger toy that wasn't in the movie, and that's why it wasn't good. It wasn't good, but it was good. I actually really enjoyed it, and I would actually even watch it again. Like I enjoyed the movie. I'm a big Buzz fan. Yeah. So as a Buzz fan, I guess I was a little disappointed in that regard.
I mean, you guys don't think that, like, I mean, even though I guess we probably all think it's worse than the other 3 Toy Stories, but like this doesn't, in your guys' opinions, like bring down the Toy Story franchise.
No, it actually makes me less sad about 3 in retrospect, because I was like really crushed by 3, and I still am. Like to this, when I think about it, I get a chill down my spine, and it's like it takes me back to that moment, and that's because of the time in my life that I watched it, and kind of being in sync with Andy's timeline, and kind of going, into the precipice of adulthood and all that stuff. But then, to see that life does go on afterwards, and I feel like if I was a parent watching this movie, it would hit a little harder, because what Woody is struggling with, I think, is you raise a child. In his eyes, he raised Andy. He saw him grow up, and now the child's off in the world living his own life, and he doesn't really get to see any of that. And he's still happy that, he had that experience, but then there's a certain emptiness. It's weird. It's like what Boyhood did, and what, when the mom character in that, at the end of the movie, she's like, I thought that there would be more. And I feel like that's what Woody's struggling with, and I love the fact that they're showing him, like, you are able to do more than what you've done before, and you can become something else, and there is life beyond that. And I think if I were in a different place in my life, if I had a kid, it would have probably hit me harder.
I was going to say, I think there's even parallels with Endgame a little bit, because it essentially was what, if you think about what Tony Stark was almost throughout the entire Avengers trying to tell Captain America too, that you have to be selfish at some point. That's essentially the message that's coming through for Woody too, that Bo Peep is trying to tell him, because his whole livelihood as a toy basically is that he's taking care of Woody basically through being Andy. Woody is taking care of Andy through being his toy, basically being his support system, and now he's trying to basically impress this upon someone else, on a new kid who doesn't really reciprocate that relationship. He's trying to force something that's not there. Now he's trying to take care of a new Forky, this new toy, and all these things. He's trying to force something that doesn't exist. But basically he has to move on, and it's the same kind of thing that essentially Tony Stark was trying to tell Captain America. You've served your country, now serve yourself in essence, and be with the person you wanted to be, live your own life, and essentially there's a time to be selfish.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Endgame, because I think what made Endgame so big was because that was the accumulation of 11 years of films, right? So even though for us, we weren't necessarily kids when it came out, we're still the late teens. Yeah. So for us, I think that even for us, it kind of felt that element of okay, this is we're seeing this thing to come to fruition. But people that are younger, people that are 20, that was their big thing. We're oh my gosh, after all these years we followed it. And for us, I think something like Toy Story is more akin to that for us, even though there was lesser films, especially 1 through 3, because we were kids playing with toys when Toy Story 1 came out. So then when Toy Story 3 came out, we were late teens, early 20s. You kind of had to give away the childish. So even though no one's at 20 is playing with toys, the idea of giving away or stopping the childness type of stuff and kind of becoming adults, But yeah, with Toy Story 4, I think it's a little bit different, because it's here's a new little girl, and it doesn't have that same. We don't have any kind of connection to Bonnie or her family really like that.
That's why James and I were talking about. I said I didn't. It was less emotional resonance than intellectual, because there is an aspect. I think I mentioned Cartesian duality in our text conversation about it, because if you look at the Rene Descartes saying "I think, therefore I am," right? That Forky thinks he's trash, therefore he's trash, until he doesn't think he's trash anymore and believes he's a toy, and then he becomes a toy, even though he was all the time to Bonnie. And Woody's the same thing. I mean, he thinks he's a toy, and his purpose, his sole reason of existence, is to service the child that he's with. But if the child is not reciprocating that service, or isn't open to it, doesn't need it, then what are you then? Then you lose your identity, and you lose your sense of self and your sense of purpose, and then it's up to you to refine that again. And you find again that you can serve another purpose. It's just depending on how you look at the situation.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, I feel I think we probably talked about this, after Toy Story 3 came out, I think there was definitely the perception that it's okay, Toy Story is over. And then when they announced they were making 4, I don't know what year it was, 2014 or 13. I forgot because they announced it years ago. Yeah. But when they announced it, I think everybody was whoa, that's interesting that they're doing Toy Story 4 after the way they ended 3. I mean, do you guys think that they could ever do a 5?
I think so.
I mean, would you be shocked if 5 came out?
I don't know what it would be, but I'm glad because when they announced Toy Story 4, I think I had the opinion, and a lot of people did, that like, I hope they don't ruin what was a perfect trilogy.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, they did not ruin it. I mean, they added to it. It doesn't fit in the same on the same level as the other 3 for me personally, but they certainly didn't ruin it. It really is a really great film, and it does service the characters, at least Woody, to a great extent. And it adds to the lore of that, storied franchise. But
I mean, when it comes to franchise entries, I mean, we'd have to probably really dig through all franchises to see which ones actually had the most amount of good entries. But like, I mean, at least when it comes to other animated films, the only other thing that's comparable to Toy Story in terms of numbers and how big that they were is probably Shrek. But even Shrek had like 2, I think, phenomenal entries.
Yeah.
Puss in Boots, I thought, was a very good movie. Maybe not as good as Shrek 1 and 2.
It's not really.
Yeah, but like Shrek 3 was terrible.
Shrek the Third,
and that actually hurt the
good.
Shrek brand. And then Shrek 4 was very mediocre. I remember thinking
it was hurt. But I mean, I liked Shrek 4, or Shrek Forever After it was called, right? But
that was the one with the red.
The wind had been taken out of the whole thing
because the third one, the third one had hurt the franchise so bad. This in no way does any kind of like damage at all, like to the Toy Story brand as much as Shrek.
I think
3.
it builds it. I mean, not even just animated. What other film franchise that has 4 entries in it at minimum are as good as Toy Story?
Have 3 great entries and then 1 very good entry.
I don't think it exists. I
don't think so.
I still
either.
maintain this probably the greatest series of films.
Because even like, I mean, the closest one, the first one that kind of pops into my mind is like maybe Mission Impossible, but a lot of people don't like Mission Impossible 2, so that's a bad entry.
That wasn't great. 3's okay. Mission Impossible has a lot of good entries, but I don't think they're in the same caliber. Like just consistently.
Yeah, because even the
really great like storytelling.
Because every franchise, they always got that, I mean, James, you love Back to the Future, but you don't like Back to the Future 3.
No, Back to the Future 3 kind of ruins it for me.
In Toy Story, Terminator, like, you got 2 good entries.
Yeah. For the original trilogy of Star Wars, I think, that's pretty... I think Lord of the Rings is a great 3
But then
movies,
they got the Hobbits.
Right, I mean, add the 4th... It's hard because not a lot of movies. I mean, there's a lot of trilogies. 4 is then you're getting into like weird territory because usually they'll take a break and then they'll come back, like Die Hard, right?
Yeah.
Die Hard 4 was like in the 2000s, and it was just. I feel like it's so far removed. I can't really consider.
It's hard to even judge it. Yeah.
And it's not even great. It's not on the same level as a Toy Story. I mean, for me, my favorite like series of films are like the Before series. Okay. Richard Linklater's Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight. And then Toy Stories 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. To me, the greatest trilogies ever made.
Very interesting. There's probably not a lot of people on Earth that those are 2 of their greatest favorite trilogies ever. I love them. I can hear you there. I mean, I just feel like you're right. Like, there are not a lot of franchises that have a high number of good entries. Even like the Rockies, like films, like that's one of my favorite franchises ever. But still, you still have Rocky 5.
Yeah.
I mean,
that shakes it down. Although Rocky 4, up until 4. It's pretty good.
And then Rocky Balboa is a very good movie, and the two Creed movies.
Yeah, the 2 Creed movies are good too.
Yeah,
there's good franchises out there. I think the quality is a bit higher for Toy Story. That's to be expected. I mean, Pixar is pretty.
And this is a
pinnacle of storytelling, I think.
Yeah, and this is a big budget film. I mean, this is probably. I mean, I guess you'd have to really break it down, but if we're not talking about outside of Star Wars and Marvel, I mean, Toy Story has to be probably one of the biggest brands that Disney has. So, I mean, this is a big flagship brand for Disney, and they put a lot of care into it. I mean, you could have definitely made an argument that Toy Story could have turned more into like Illumination and done Minion type stuff, and they didn't. So,
and that's what you have to think about too. I mean, let's say it doesn't clear $1 billion, which we're still debating it now. I think there's going to be a lot of money made with merchandising. I mean, how often do you see people, just kids with toys, Woody, Buzz? It's still
Forky's,
popular.
I think Forky is going to be a popular.
Yeah,
I want a Forky.
Huh. I mean, literally. I mean, for Disney, I mean, you're right. Like, even for them, even if the film, let's say, makes $800 million worldwide, the merchandise is tremendous. I mean, they're running the ads right now for Pixar. What do they call it? California Adventure?
Pixar Pier. Yeah, they have a Toy Story Land in Florida. They have lots of things that I think they can continue to build on. And I mean, it's part of their broader strategy to just pretty much integrate everything into pretty much everything they do as a brand. But
in doing that, they maintain the artistic merit. Like, these are really fantastic movies, and they're just Pixar. I really think that they're master storytellers. like kind of unparalleled in the industry. Even though they've had Cars, 2 and 3, and they've had somewhat mediocre entries in Good Dinosaur. But when you look at their entire filmography, I don't think there's anything close.
And that's even being on top of the fact that they've had a brain drain where these people have gone to Disney Animation. You've had some people leave key positions.
You've had the Lasseter, issues, but it's not one person. I think there's probably a culture that's engendered there, and they just produce fantastic work, and I'm excited every time, especially when original stuff comes out, like the Soul that they announced coming out next year. That we'll see.
I guess as long as they don't put Kathleen Kennedy in charge of Pixar, Disney should be fine. So what do you guys think about Big Daddy? I feel like this is going to be one of the most skewed things. I feel like if you're a person that's 22 years old to 32 years old, you probably have a completely wildly different thought of the movie than you do if you're 40 and older or 18 or younger. So I thought for myself, I love Big Daddy. I feel like that's probably, in my opinion, well, maybe 51st Date's the last one. Big Daddy is definitely towards the end of when I think pinnacle Sandler. Definitely Big Daddy is towards the end of that, because Big Daddy came out after Waterboy, Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison, Wedding Singer. But I think the only last, true great Adam Sandler film after this was 51st Dates. But I love Big Daddy. I watched it all the time as a kid.
Big Daddy was my I think it was Christmas of the year 2000. My brother and I got a DVD player for the first time, and the first DVD we ever got was Big Daddy. And that Christmas break, I remember I watched the movie every single day. I was really maybe that's because I didn't have any other options, but I also don't think I would have watched it every single day if it wasn't something that for whatever reason spoke to me when I was a kid. I just really liked that movie a lot. Yeah. And last night, actually, in preparation of this, I pulled out that same DVD and watched it again.
You still have that same DVD?
Yeah, same one. It's so weird to put it the menus. Oh man, it's so old.
And they have the trailers.
Yeah,
for movies.
It's just, but watching it, I couldn't help but think it's something I didn't think when I watched it when I was a kid. And I haven't watched it in years. Yeah. This guy's a total sociopath. He's Adam Sandler's character.
Oh, okay.
He's completely psychotic and deranged in a very disturbing way when you consider what he's doing with this kid.
Well, one big thing that I always thought for this story, even as a kid, it was Jon Stewart has, Jon Stewart, Adam Sandler's roommate. He has this kid come back, and he can't come back early at all. He can't take a later flight. He kind of says in that one phone call, and that was it. Right?
Well, he doesn't believe him at that point. He's not. He doesn't think he has a kid.
Yeah, but doesn't he say there really is a kid? And he's I'll come back. Yeah. And he's no, you don't have to. I'll take care of it. It's what do you mean you'll take care of it? What?
Well, what was your initial thoughts, James? Because I want to get into that point.
Yeah, I think it's this quintessential Adam Sandler, and it's ideal because he even does the pitch in his voice, the things that he used to do. I feel were more quintessential to him at that time, and it's in general, it's a good movie. And I remember, watching it at the Man here in Simi, the old theater, but that was back in the day when they didn't have stadium seating, so everybody would just sit in front of each other, and I hadn't watched it in probably 20 years, I guess. So I rewatched it again, and and
as an adult, you still have the same reverence for it. Maybe reverence isn't the right word.
I have a nostalgia for the movie. I think it's but I think some of the things he did now in retrospect were a little bit odd. I'll say that.
It was when I was watching. When they first, I don't remember what exactly the scene is, but it's 17 minutes into the movie, and I know because I paused it. So there's the scene when they cut to Adam Sandler and his two lawyer friends, they're a couple. Yeah. And he's on the phone with social services, and he says, "I'm going to take the kid." And I'm this was after one night, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm talking about? In the beginning of the movie,
Yeah.
I was confused. I actually had to rewind. I'm did the DVD skip? It's an old DVD. That could happen.
Were you talking about when he goes in person?
No. When it's 17 minutes into the movie. I think it's after the scene where he pours the milk, or maybe it's before that. I don't remember exactly. Okay. I think it might be before that, which is weird because I just watched it. You would think I would know exactly what it is, but it's
when he pours the milk and it spills everywhere and they cover it up with
you know what it is? I actually know what it is. Adam Sandler, the first night they're together, they go watch the Monday Night Football in the bar, and then they go home and he's putting them to sleep, and the kid asks for a nightlight. He brings him the live nude girls, sign. Turns on the nightlight and he looks at him sleep, and it's a warm, tender moment. They play this music that's supposed to be It's like the weird mix of like heart in Adam Sandler movies with the crass, like disgusting humor. But then right after that scene, they cut to the scene in the park, and like Adam Sandler is saying, "I'm thinking about keeping the kid." His friend tells him to sleep on it, and then he makes a phone call, and he's like, "I'm going to keep the kid." And I was like, "Did we skip a scene here? What happened?" Yeah. I had to rewind. You don't skip a scene. That's just how quickly things move in that world.
Yeah, you were talking about the scene where he throws the stake in the rollerbladers.
The kid does it, and he's like, "That's my boy." I don't know what he says, but it was just really weird the way that was set up, like how quickly it moved. Like you go from here's a weird strange kid on my doorstep, and then like a day later I'm gonna keep him.
Well, the thing is too is with his two lawyer like friends, like neither one of them even really point out the fact that's like this isn't even your kid to keep.
Like, yeah, I mean, you would think as lawyers they would give him some legal advice, like, hey, this is kidnapping in the state of New York and in most states in the nation, I believe.
But even if their best cases like, okay, you're watching this kid for your roommate, our friend Jon Stewart, like, what does it matter if he says I'm going to keep the kid or not? It's not his kid to keep.
No, because he's lying. He's lying to social service and saying he's Jon Stewart.
Yeah, but it still is actually Jon Stewart's kid.
It is, but
so it's weird that he even made that decision.
Well, they don't. I mean, do you really? A kid shows up on your door tomorrow, okay, with a note attached to his jacket saying, "This is your son." Are you gonna like just take that at its word, or are you gonna go
get a blood test? Yeah.
So I mean, Jon Stewart's in China, so we can't do a blood test. But I don't know if does he believe that that's his son? Why? There's never any indication that Adam Sandler actually buys into that story.
Because the next time we see Jon Stewart, isn't he shows up at the court, right? We don't see him anytime between then until the time that he goes to court.
No.
And then saying that is my biological son, right?
He tells this like as if he's had an epiphany, like, we were up in Toronto for this baseball game, and I slept with this girl at Hooters. Okay, the timing works out. You still, want to know that it's your son, but like, I don't think it's never made clear that Adam Sandler or anyone around him actually believe that this is Jon Stewart's son.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So
they believe that it's actually his son.
No, I don't.
Sonny's
son. Adam Sandler knows it's not his son.
Well, he knows.
He just doesn't care. I feel like the thing is he just doesn't care. Like he just wants this kid for whatever reasons. Like it's not made clear why he wants the kid. It's made clear a little bit like, he wants to prove to his girlfriend that he's responsible and can like commit to something. So the kid is there, and that they say that later on. But like initially, that's just kind of weird.
Well, that girlfriend even too. I mean, she's in like 3 scenes in the whole movie, right?
Yeah.
The beginning scene, the scene with the old guy,
and then the scene at the end.
Yeah, the end where she's back at Hooters, and her old boyfriend's the cook at Hooters.
Another thing, like this Hooters, like they mentioned Hooters so many times in this movie.
They were an official sponsor, I feel like, for the movie.
They must have been. There's a weird. I guess we considered that funny. I guess there's a lot. I still like the movie.
I thought it was hilarious.
That's the thing is like watching this. It's the first time I've really watched it. I feel like as an adult.
Okay.
And I definitely it took something away from it. Well, unlike movies like Dumb and Dumber, where like I loved them as a kid and I still love them now because this movie did present some more issues for me, like moral quandaries, I would say, because of how crazy Adam Sandler is. Like,
the weird thing about Big Daddy is like, at least when I think of like Adam Sandler's career, so like you look at like Happy Gilmore and Billy Madison, those films to me just feel so outside of reality. Like, they just seem so zany. Like, everything about them, right? Even, like, the laws of physics are weird, right? Like, remember in Happy Gilmore, he hits the golf ball, like, towards the beginning of the film, and he hits that old lady that's, like, looking out her window, and she falls down off the roof and hits the ground. It's like, but that was at the time of Adam Sandler. It was just anything goes. Like, in Billy Madison, like, there's, like, that penguin walking around.
I love that penguin.
And, like, but it's just because it was so zany. But then you get a little, like, later in the 90s, like, with, The Wedding Singer, or even, like, a little bit Waterboy-ish, but especially, like, Big Daddy, where, like, it's still weird, but the way that it's presented is that you feel like you could actually live in that world, Like, I feel like normal people live in Big Daddy's world, but then they still bring in random things like you're talking. Like the whole plot itself sounds
the plot
bizarre.
Is just troublesome. Like as to its believability, I don't really care. Like I'll go with it. I enjoyed the movie still while watching it, but
and I think as kids we watch it through rose-colored glasses or whatever because it's like, well, if you're really little, the idea of having a father who's just fun-loving and wants to just throw things and watch skaters fall over and do whatever and not work at all and bother about any kind of responsibility seems fun. But then you're watching it again and you're like, he's legitimately, putting that child at risk quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, would you guys say, how many great Adam Sandler films do you think came out after this? I mean, I really like 51st Dates. I don't know.
I have to remember the actual
Taylor likes it
hierarchy of the order of them. I like 51st Dates.
Because definitely this past decade.
So
you're hard pressed to find
the thing about it is, like, I really love Punch Drunk Love, and that's probably
because was that around the same time?
That's I think that's like 2005 maybe.
Okay,
but that's not the typical Adam Sandler movie. That's a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and it's a little offbeat. I love that movie, and I think he's great in it. So for me, it's like I love The Wedding Singer is probably my favorite Adam Sandler movie.
Wedding Singer is one of mine.
I don't consider Punch Drunk Love an Adam Sandler movie. He just happens to be in it, and I think it's a really good movie. I can't think of like comedies of his that I like. I liked Just Go With It, the first Jennifer Aniston movie with
where they go to Hawaii.
Yeah, the first in his string of vacation.
He's done so many of them now with the same people that it's confusing. So he's done the 2 vacation ones with her. He did he goes to Africa with Drew Barrymore.
Blended.
That looks so similar to 51st Dates. Like, certain scenes, it's like, here you are in a tropical setting with the same actress again.
Yeah. No, they've done a lot of that lately.
I mean, I feel like with Adam Sandler, I will say he kind of gets a bad rap where everybody, at least today, everyone just says, oh, Adam Sandler, he's just in it only for the money. Everything he does is always crap. Like, not everything he does is crap. He'll produce stuff that's okay.
He's likable, and I think his films are enjoyable if you go in with the right mindset. Like, you're not going to watch high cinema. That's not what they're doing. They're doing something that's going to entertain you on a Saturday night. If you're Netflix or if you're going to the movies, I mean, they're just...
Yeah, but forever, Grown Ups 2, which was awful. Like, I mean, he does films like, Hotel Transylvania that are okay. Yeah, there's nothing. I mean, he does
the first one. I never saw the sequel.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like everything he ever does is the worst movie you've ever seen in your life. Like, everyone now, I think the idea is like every movie he does is equal to like My Boy or whatever it's called with Andy Samberg.
That's My Boy.
That's My Boy or Jack and Jill.
Yeah,
I mean, everything he does is
not bad.
Like, is not god awful.
Funny People was good.
Is that the one with...
That's the Judd Apatow one with Seth Rogen. It's a little more serious, a little darker, but I mean...
That was like 10 years ago
I
or
liked
something?
It. Yeah, I think in 2008-ish.
Okay.
But yeah, he's had good movies in the last decade, 15 years. I mean, he's still relevant. He's still very relevant, especially positioning himself as this Netflix star.
And he was on SNL a few weeks ago, and I think it was the best episode they had in a while because... Yeah. Largely, they're not that strong anymore.
He also had the Netflix special, which was pretty good. His stand-up special.
I didn't watch it, but I mean, he definitely has a good gig for himself. That Happy Madison production. I think they do. What major TV show do they do? Is it the the Goldbergs? I think they do the Goldbergs. They do. I mean, with Adam Sandler, I mean, he's gone quite a ways. I mean, if you compare him to the other SNL cast members at the time that he was there, like, whatever the late or early 90s, late 80s even. I mean, I feel like you could say that he's probably been more relevant for a longer period of time than any other person he was on with. Like, you look at like a Chris Rock or Mike Myers. Chris Rock, he never even really had any big success in film, really. And then Mike Myers, he had Shrek and Austin Powers, but neither one of those have produced a film in over 10 years. The only thing I can think of Mike Myers that he's done in this whole decade was Bohemian Rapsody. I can't even think of one other movie
he was in Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah, but wasn't that like 2009?
Was it?
It's been a while, but even that.
How old are we?
But even in that film, he's only like virtually a cameo.
Well, yeah, he's not. I think he doesn't need to.
No, he doesn't need to.
He was in that really bad Cat in the Hat movie, right?
I think that was even earlier.
Yeah, that was
okay.
I'm sure he had. Well, I know he did the Gong Show, which I don't know if that guy
Gong Show.
Yeah,
he was hosting it.
Yeah,
as somebody else,
but as like a
alias.
character.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other thing he's done, but yeah, I mean, I think Adam Sandler. I mean, he's definitely. Maybe he's done fine for himself. I think Big Daddy, in my mind, I think this is probably one of his last great entries. Like I said, man, I really like 51st Dates because of the whole like romantic side of it and everything. But yeah, this is definitely towards the end of, I think his peak, in my opinion.
Yeah, probably. I mean, you're probably right. In terms of his like power in Hollywood to open a movie like that, he's probably.
Well, this was his highest grossing film, so I looked it up. I think this was his highest grossing film until like Hotel Transylvania 2.
That doesn't count. So.
Yeah, but even then, it's like So you think like, wow, Big Daddy made more money than all those films between this and Hotel Transylvania 2?
That's surprising. I don't remember if I saw it in theaters. I'm going to say I must have because we wanted the DVD.
Big Daddy?
Yeah.
I can't remember watching that in theater. I remember the same thing. I think I had the VHS version where like I watched it like all the time. So I watched it probably at least 100 times, which there would never be a movie that would come out ever again in my life that I would purposely want to watch 100 unless I had
never
a kid.
going to be 9 years old again. So.
Yeah. I mean, unless I have a kid that they want to watch it. Did you hear about that? There was the B movie. You hear about this on Netflix? There was a kid that was replaying the B movie every day.
Jerry Seinfeld B movie?
Yeah, Jerry Seinfeld's B movie. And Netflix actually reached out to the kid's parents. They're like,
to tell him to stop?
Well, they said they're like, oh, there's something wrong with your account. Like, why is the B movie playing every day? And the mom said they're like, oh, my kid, I forgot if it was a boy or girl, was they love B movie.
I've never seen that movie, but I've always, there's a clip where, you know, as the B, Jerry Seinfeld is like, you like jazz? I really think that's hilarious because he says that in everything he does.
Well, the funny thing about the B movie is like it was such a mediocre movie. Like I was actually working at a movie theater when it came out, and like I remember like the only thing I remember most about the movie was that it was mediocre. And that one time before the movie started, there was these two kids in there, and I somebody complained they're being really loud, so I told them just to kind of like, hey, like don't be as loud. And then I was leaving the theater, they spit on me. Oh, wow. Like I was walking out the exit, and they looked down and spat on me. That's all I remember for B-movie, but now it's weird. Like, there's all this, like, meme stuff about it, and people talk about it, and I absolutely have no reason why.
It doesn't come up in my daily conversations.
But that's like a thing in internet culture is B-movie.
Internet culture.
Or at least it was, like, a year or two ago.
Yeah, I really don't hear much about the B-movie. This is the first time
there's not much to talk about.
I mean, we're bringing it up right now, so there must be something, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, did you notice that in Big Daddy, little Julian's playing Twisted Metal when he doesn't want to do his homework? That's a throwback. Did you notice that on the PS1?
I did not notice that.
Yeah, he's playing a Sweet Tooth. I was like, oh, I remember that. It takes you back, you know. That's why the movie still plays in my mind.
Yeah.
All that nostalgia.
What did you guys, I know one thing that we've done in the past is this whole, like, cast swapping thing. I mean, for this, I don't know. I feel like it probably wouldn't be as pronounced as previous films. Because, like, I mean, obviously, if you switch the cast, I mean, Adam Sandler would be Woody. And that would just be I don't think a good Woody.
Well, I think Jon Stewart could be Woody.
That would be a better Woody. Yeah. But the problem with Jon Stewart is that he's such a minor character in Big Daddy.
That doesn't matter. You're casting. You're not casting Jon Stewart's character in that movie.
I guess that's true. I would have liked to see, if we're going to keep the other characters, I would like to see Rob Schneider with that accent. I mean, yeah, I know you said the mannequin. That would be pretty...
Well, the mannequin doesn't even speak. He just looks terrifying to me. Although, let me just say, I think Rob Schneider's best role ever.
Yeah, or...
I think it's his greatest performance.
You think better than Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo?
Because I hate that movie? Yes.
You hate Deuce Bigalow?
No, I'm not a fan of
When I was a kid, I loved Deuce Bigalow. I remember watching that in theaters.
Yeah, no.
Looking back,
there are a lot of Rob Schneider movies I just don't.
Did you ever see The Hot Chick?
I saw that one, yeah.
I never even saw it. I just remember the trailer being so mind-numbingly stupid when he's like holding on to like making the horse noise and touching that mailbox, which I can't imagine the Postal Service was happy about.
You know, Adam Sandler's in The Hot Chick too. He's like a cameo role, and he's like an old Rasta guy with dreadlocks. Yeah, it's not very. You know, who's that chick in it? Rachel McAdams.
Rachel McAdams. Yeah.
She was in so many things randomly in the thousands.
Far too good for that movie.
And she's actually, I think she's aged very well. I think she looks better now than she did in the mid-thousands.
She's beautiful. Yeah, she's a great actress.
Yeah. I guess I don't know if we're trying to go down the roster. I mean, who would have been Buzz?
There's too many people in Toy Story 4's voice cast.
Yeah, there's that voice cast. I mean, we've talked about this before. Like, I mean, if you just only kind of cursory watch Toy Story 4 and you really look at the, you know, who's in it, the names are crazy. Like Carl Weathers is in it, Flea's in it, Mel Brooks, Betty White, Helen Hunt,
Don Rickles is still in
Helen
it too.
Hunt in it?
Yeah, and like there are
I don't see Helen Hunt in the cast list.
I think she's Raggedy.
Laurie Metcalf. Carol Burnett, Carl Reiner, Bill Hader, Patricia Arquette, Timothy Dalton, Flea. That's a lot of people.
I mean, Toy Story 4, I mean, I guess people just came on just so they can have their names listed. Yeah. It almost seems like Big Daddy was essentially your cast of Rob Schneider people plus Jon Stewart.
Yeah, I don't know those three guys who appear in a lot of the Happy Madison movies.
Yeah, because there's...
I don't know their names.
Because the guy, like, you know, the two gay lawyer guys, like the one with, like, the really good hairline, and also described with the black hair, he was the quarterback in Waterboy.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other guy, I don't know any of their names.
We could have done a little research and looked it up, but it wasn't that important.
You know, the one guy who's one of Adam Sandler's guys that's in all of his movies, he actually does the voice now for Slinky. You know you remember in Waterboy? You remember there was the guy in the overalls?
Wasn't he also in 50 First Dates? He played Drew Barrymore's dad.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah. He's Slinky's voice now.
I know him as Sean's father.
Yeah, he's Sean's dad
Boy Meets
too.
World.
Oh yeah, now I know who you're talking about better.
Yeah, because the original voice actor died. It was that
Ernest guy, and he died whatever it was 20 years ago or however many years ago it was. But
and no one noticed.
Yeah, I mean, if I was more into those movies, I think I would have been sad. That's another crazy thing too. Like, so many people have passed away from the Toy Story cast.
I think just those two.
Well, then the guy that does the army voice, soldiers. The guy was also in Saving Silverman.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't know.
Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, he's like the sergeant guy.
Oh.
He's like that really famous sergeant that's like yelling.
Right.
I don't know what his real name is, but he passed away, I know, like a year or two ago. Well, all right, guys, I guess that probably does it for Big Daddy and TS4. Unless you guys have anything else to say, I guess, make sure you guys check out next week's episode. And, yeah, thanks again for listening back to the Box Office.
Bye.